Here's to cheating, fighting, stealing, and drinking. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Jeff here. It is July the 18th, and we have another cloudy day here in Las Vegas. It's Monday, and I thought I would get started on this thing that I want to do, which is every day. I just want to do a little bit of music, maybe talk about some beers or some bourbons, or I don't know, today, coffee, but it's early. I'll go ahead and invite you, if you will, to subscribe if you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing. And as I said, I'm going to plan on having a little talk at least 4 or 5 times a week. Who knows, maybe every day. We'll see how that goes. Happy birthdays today. I looked this up. Nelson Mandela was born in 1918. Happy birthday to Nelson Mandela. Although he's gone, he was a significant impact in the world. What he did, you can look all that up. I'll throw a link at the bottom of everything I talk about today, so if you want to look up some more information. John Glenn was also born on this day. I did not write down the day he was born, but of course, you know, he's the first U.S. astronaut to go up and orbit the Earth, and that was significant for us because we ended up going to the moon, which was kind of cool. 1969, I watched that. That was July 20th, 1969. That's how old I am, and I got to watch that with my grandfather. And before I leave today, I'm going to give you an Irish quote, or an Irish toast, I guess, because my grandfather was Irish. He always wanted to go to Ireland. He never got a chance to do that. I still have not made it to Ireland. I've made it to England, but I do plan on getting to Ireland as soon as I can. What else happened today? 1976, Nadia Comaneci became the first, maybe female gymnast, maybe any gymnast, to get a perfect 10 whatsoever. I remember watching that back in 1976. I understand she moved to the United States. She defected from the Soviet Union, moved to the United States, and even I think the last I heard, she lives somewhere near Atlanta or in Atlanta or somewhere around there. I don't think she's gone from us yet. Anyway, so today I thought I would, I was thinking yesterday about bluegrass, bluegrass music. I've got some friends of mine that do bluegrass in Nashville, Donna Ulisse, and I think I can throw a link down to some of her stuff too. She's highly recognized as a bluegrass entertainer in Nashville, along with her husband, Rick Stanley. They were good friends of mine. I got a chance to sing at their wedding when they got married back in Norfolk, Virginia. Oh, and by the way, if you're from Norfolk, you pronounce it Norfolk. It's not Norfolk. Anyone who's not from Norfolk pronounces it Norfolk. That's where I pretty much where I grew up. Anyway, I did this the other day, and as I was telling you, I'm just basically going to hammer out some of my originals. Sometimes I'll do pieces of originals. I'm going to make lots of mistakes. I will stop and tell you when I make a mistake, even sometimes. I am not editing this whatsoever. Every mistake that I make is just going to be on here every single day. I don't care about that. I'm going to continue doing them, but I'm going to continue singing and playing. I wrote this song after meeting one of the more famous people that I've met, a guy named James Buchanan, Jimmy Buchanan. Jim Buchanan, if you look him up, he's a fiddle player, violin player, a fiddle player, who played with a quintet called the David Grisman Quintet. Now, David Grisman, I have never met him, or Dave Grisman, however he wants to best be known. I think he's still out there, and I'll once again throw links to this kind of stuff. And he's still doing bluegrass, but I think both Jim Buchanan and Dave Grisman are both retired, or at least semi-retired at this point. One of the more famous albums that I enjoyed that they were on was by Dan Fogelberg, and I don't know if you remember Dan Fogelberg. He was big back in my day. I think I have everything Dan Fogelberg ever recorded, ever did. I thought he was one of the greatest songwriters of all time, and that even includes Mozart. I just think he was such a poet and such a great songsmith. Would be a good way of labeling him, but really a poet that was a songsmith, and he just had a way with words. So, and this particular album that both David Grisman and Jim Buchanan were on was called High Country Snows, and it came out right around 1985. That's the time that I got married for the first time. And I was playing music full-time at that point. And I met this young man that came in and listened to me play music in, I think, the NCO club there in Virginia Beach in the Norfolk area. I was playing at one of the military bases. He came in and he said, and I forgot his name for the life of me. I cannot remember the young man's name. He came in and said, you know, he was in the military and that his dad was Jim Buchanan. And did I know him? I said, no, I've never heard of Jim Buchanan. I knew bluegrass music, but the bluegrass that I knew, you know, was going back to some of the early days and like Bill Monroe and that type of stuff. I didn't know any famous bluegrass players at the time. So it's Jim Buchanan. So he played me like one or two of his songs. Oh, cool. And so I became friends with him. And every time I'd play there, he'd come out and he'd hear my music. And so he asked me, he knew I was going to Nashville at one point, and he asked me if he could catch a ride with me and maybe stop off at his dad's house and he would introduce me to his dad. I said, sure. So he caught a ride with me, and we went out and I met his dad and got to know him. His dad even published one of my songs. And I forgot which song it was, but at the time I was playing and singing also with a group called the Harmony Brothers, and we did a lot of country music. And so one of the songs I think he published was one of the songs that the Harmony Brothers was doing at the time, and I forgot which one it was. And so I didn't think a whole lot of it, you know. Time went on, and then I noticed on the Dan Fogelberg album, I'm listening to High Country Snows, and he calls out his name. And I wrote it down here. It was 1 minute and 20 seconds in on the track called Shallow Rivers. Now, I will, once again, post all of this down at the bottom so you could look it up. But this was 84, 85 when I met him. In 1985 when High Country Snows came out, and he ended up being on tracks 2, 6, 7, and 10 on the album. And David Grisman was also on those tracks. I learned that later, 2, 4, 6, 7, and 10. And these are really, really good bluegrass tunes that Dan Fogelberg wrote. Now, Dan Fogelberg, if you remember, his biggest hit was probably Longer, you know, longer than there been fishes in the ocean. And he had several hits after that, Leader of the Band, lots of really good tunes. But nobody really knew Dan Fogelberg as a bluegrass player until he came out with High Country Snows. Well, I learned that at the time, and then I went on to meet Jim Buchanan one more time. I saw him one more time by mistake. I was at the Chesapeake Jubilee, and if some of my friends out there from Chesapeake, they'll remember that. And I ended up writing the first, I guess, theme song for the Chesapeake Jubilee, and I entitled it Chesapeake Jubilee. Went into the studio, recorded it. It's called the Chesapeake Jubilee. And so I was out there at that particular show, and George Jones was there, and playing fiddle for George Jones was Jim Buchanan. So I got a chance to talk to him before George Jones came on. I think he came out first, and the band was playing a couple tunes before George Jones showed up, and then he took a pause, says, "Hey, Jim." And there he is. "Hey, Jeff, how's it going?" He probably won't remember me anymore, and of course David Grisman never knew who I was. But what I did do, that's going to lead to the song I'm going to practice a little bit today and play a little bit of today, was I went home and I wrote a bluegrass song. The only one I've ever written, so this would also date back to the 80s, like the last tune that I did for you. But not knowing how to play banjo, and not knowing how to play fiddle, and not knowing how to play mandolin, I describe those things in this song, and I leave room for those instruments in this song, but I just basically wrote the song on piano. It's in C, as I was explaining the last time. I write most of my songs with all the white keys because I'm not a great piano player. So, and this one I left alone. I left it in C. The last one I said I wrote in C. I actually wrote it in G and transposed it to A. This one I'm not transposing whatsoever. But I'll try to get through this song because I don't play it a lot. But there'll be a part where I'll announce, hey, you know, about Dave. I'll call someone Dave, and I'll call someone Uncle Jimmy or something like that. Well, those are Jim Buchanan and David Grisman. And I hope one day maybe they'll get a chance to hear that I wrote a song for them. I'm going to try to send it to them and see what they think. But anyway, it's just like a vamp. Just like that. And so basically I'm just trying to keep rhythm and doing the song. I guess I should say the name of the song is Carolina Grapevine, and let me say a couple things about that real quick before we get into the song. My family is mostly from North Carolina, And so I remember growing up, my grandfather would grow grapes out in the backyard. He had a garden, and grapes were one of the things. I don't think he turned any of it into wine, although the song says he did. I'm sort of playing with that. I don't remember Granddaddy drinking a whole lot of wine. He did partake in a couple of other spirits, a couple of which I enjoy today, and I will talk about later in other videos. But I'd like to dedicate this song to my granddaddy, my grandfather Linton, Granddaddy Linton, who it really hurt when I lost him years and years and years ago. But this song reminds me of him. It reminds me of my grandmother, which I called Mima. And but this song is called The Carolina Grapevine. I can still remember back in East Carolina when my daddy taught me how to shake the grapes off the vine, turn those grapes to jam and then the rest into wine. Everybody had a good time. Now let me tell you folks about the kind of time that we had. Every sip was luscious, not an ounce of it bad. The music filled the air and all the pickers were glad to see that everybody had a good time. Everybody singing and clapping their hands, pass around the jug with the wine. Mama started laughing and then Papa joined in. Everybody loved that Carolina grapevine. Pretty simple. Here we go. Now, early in the evening when the sun's sinking low, Uncle Jimmy grabbed his fiddle and he rosin his bow, leaned back in the bibs he wore and put on a show, and everybody had a good time. Go Jimmy! Everybody singing and clapping their hands, pass around the jug with the wine. Mama started laughing and then Papa joined in. Everybody loved that Carolina grapevine. And so as you see, I gave a little space there for Jimmy to do a little fiddle soloing. And now it's Dave's turn. Now Cousin Dave is not about to be put to shame. He says, step aside there, Jimmy, and I'll show you the same. That 8-string that he wore, no one but David could tame. And everybody had a good time. Go Dave, this is Dave's turn. Everybody singing and clapping their hands, pass around the jug with the wine. Mama started laughing and then Papa joined in. Everybody loved that Carolina grapevine. And now everybody. Yahoo! Something like that. So yeah, I wrote that for both David Grisman and for Jim Buchanan, and now I understand that both gentlemen are like in their 70s and 80s and semi-retired. And that just shows that not all of my songs are slow, love, sappy songs, even though that one probably kind of sucks too. It's still, it's a happy song. It's a jamming song, and I've written 2 or 3 songs that are really good for just getting the band together and just jamming. You could take that song and just jam, and you could do that where I take it down from C down into the key of A, and you could do that over and over as many times as you want. You can add other instruments to it, banjos and all kinds of bluegrass instruments, but in the end, that one's all about having fun. I will throw in the links to Chesapeake Jubilee. Definitely do that. While I'm thinking about it, please subscribe. And hey, click like if you like this, and if you want to see a lot more of this, it really helps me out. It doesn't cost you anything when you do that. It helps out the channel here, and I'm just trying to create a channel around just music and fun things and art and drinking and going on cruises and stuff that maybe you might enjoy. Anyway, you can tell me if you enjoy it or not. So the other thing, I'll definitely include that. I'll include some links into the Fogelberg stuff that I talked about. I'll also include links to where you can go and look up at the David Grisman Quintet and some of the things that David Grisman's done, some of the things that Jimmy Buchanan has done. And I'll also even throw in links about Nelson Mandela and John Glenn and Nadia Comaneci and some of the other things I've talked about. Anything I talk about during the day, I'll throw in links to. And hey, as I said before we finish this thing out, enjoy your coffee. And my grandfather, who always wanted to go to Ireland, always never got a chance to go that I understand. Anyway, I'd like to send out this Irish toast to him. This is, here's to cheating, fighting, stealing, and drinking. Hey, well, and that's not all of it. If you cheat, may you cheat death. If you steal, may you steal a woman's heart. If you fight, may you fight for a brother. And if you drink, may you drink with me.